Hi, English students. We're back for another section of the Odyssey. This section is called Scylla and Charybdis. These are two terrible dangers that Odysseus is about to face. Now, let's recall that Circe had already warned Odysseus about these dangers. You might remember that she told him about the wandering rocks that can move around in the ocean and crush animals and ships. Well, she also told him about these horrible monsters. One is called Scylla, and if you have your questions opened, you're going to find a picture of Scylla on your questions. Let's kind of skip down here to a picture of Scylla. There she is. She's like a multi-headed dragon that has sharp fangs and teeth, and she can snatch out from the rocks in which she lives and grab sailors off of their ships and devour them. Then there's also Charybdis. Now, it is a sentient whirlpool. That means it's a whirlpool that actually has the ability to think. In some pictures, I've actually seen it as a whirlpool that has teeth in it that it can devour the people whole. Sometimes it's portrayed like that in movies, but in this case, we can see in the image, it's just a big whirlpool, and the whirlpool can move around and kind of suck the ships down and take the sailors. So please have your questions opened as we are reading. That way you can answer the questions as we are going through it. For example, question number 5 asks, when the scene opens, the crew hears the loud crashing sound of water spewing from Charybdis. Go to lines 766 to 772 and reword what Odysseus says to his crew to put the heart into them or help them be brave. Okay. So when you find the PDF, you want to go to page 33 and follow along. All right. So let's begin. Scylla and Charybdis. But scarcely had that island faded in blue air. That was the island where the sirens lived. Then I saw smoke and white water with a sound of waves and tumult, a sound that the men heard, and it terrified them. Oars flew from their hands. The blades went knocking wild alongside until the ship lost its way, with no oar blades to drive her through the water. Well, I walked up and down from bow to stern, trying to put heart into them, standing over every oarsman, saying gently, now, friends, we never been in danger before this? More fearsome is it now than when the Cyclops penned us in his cave? Oh, what power he had! Did I not keep my nerve and use my wits to find a way out for us? Now I say, by hook or crook, this peril too shall be something we remember. Heads up, lads! We must obey the orders as I give them. Get the oar shafts in your hands and lay back hard in your benches. Hit these breaking seas because they are being sucked into the whirlpool. So he says, hold on tightly to your oars and start rowing with purpose, right? So it says, Zeus, help us pull away before we founder. That means tilt and then sink, right? You at the tiller, listen and take in all that I say. The rudders are your duty. Keep her out of the combers and the smoke. And over to the right, you can see that means the large waves that are breaking on the beach and the ocean spray. And there's not really a beach there, but there are rocks, okay? Steer for that headland. Watch the drift, or we fetch up on the smother and you drown us. That was all, and it brought them around to action. But as I sent them on towards Scylla, I told them nothing, as they could really do nothing. They would have dropped their oars again in panic to roll for cover under the decking. Now, Circe's bidding against arms had slipped my mind, and so I tied on my cuirass and took up 2 heavy spears. Then I made my way along the foredeck, thinking to see her first from there. Now, notice that Odysseus is referring to Scylla as a female because she's a female monster, okay? The monster of the gray rock, harboring torment for my friends. I strained my eyes along the cliffside, veiled in cloud, but nowhere could I catch sight of her because it's all steamy and misty where they are. And all this time, in travail, sobbing, gaining on the current, we rode into the strait. Scylla to the port, and on our starboard beam, Charybdis, dire gorge of the sea salt tide. By heaven, when she vomited, that means spewing up the water, all the sea was like a cauldron seething over intense fire when the mixture suddenly heaves and rises. The shot spume, it soared to the landside heights, and it fell like rain. So every once in a while, this whirlpool sucks down like, and then it goes, and it sprays it up. Now that's important for a picture I'm going to show you in a moment. But when she swallowed the seawater down, we saw the funnel of a maelstrom. That means it's such a strong whirlpool. We heard the rock bellowing all around, and the dark sand raged on the bottom far below. So this whirlpool is so strong that if you look down, you actually see the bottom of the ocean. My men all blanched against the gloom. Our eyes were fixed upon that yawning mouth in fear of being devoured. And then Scylla made her strike, risking 6 of my best men from the ship. Ooh! I happened to glance aft at the ship and the oarsmen, and I caught sight of their arms and legs dangling. So Scylla has grabbed them off of the ship, and they are struggling right high overhead. Voices came down to me, in anguish, calling my name for the last time. Now, this next portion here, it's called an epic simile. We've heard of it before. Remember when we compared the way that the large spike of wood was being thrust into Polyphemus's eye? This was a comparison to the way that a smithy would take an axe and put it into water or oil and make the steam rise like psh. Well, that was a comparison called an epic simile. This section here is also an epic simile in which we are going to compare the way that Scylla is reaching out from the rock and snatching these men to the way that if you were fishing and you were to take your fishing rod and you cast it out, right? And then you suddenly jerk up on your pole and you grab a fish and it is caught in the air and it's struggling and shaking, okay? So let's see what it says. A man surf casting on a point of rock for bass or mackerel, whipping his long rod to drop the sinker and the bait far out, will hook a fish and rip it from the surface to dangle wriggling through the air. And so, when we see the word so, we can tell it's a simile. So these were borne aloft in spasms toward the cliff, and she ate them as they shrieked there in her den, in the dire grapple, reaching still for more. And deathly pity ran me through at that sight, far the worst I ever suffered, questing the passes of the strange sea. We rode on. The rocks were now behind, Charybdis too, and Scylla dropped astern. So they rode right past her, but not before some of Odysseus's men were taken off of that ship, again, like the way you would cast for a fish and jerk it up out of the water. So that's an epic simile. You'll find that on your questions, I believe. So that is it for this section. The next one is called the Cattle of the Sun God.